Zauntee.
Chaplain Milton.
Hey, good to be back, man. We are in these conversations, man. I'm really excited about this one particularly. It's kind of like where I get passionate because community is so important. But before we jump into that, this is the Wake Up Die podcast. Mm-hmm. We're here trying to understand the best way to live for God. And we're not experts in it. We're discovering it together with our community, our Wake Up Die community. And we're jumping into these 5 areas of waking up and dying. And we're going to go deep in one more topic today.
Yeah. Jesus said the most important commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
That's the one we're on right now. Loving others. How do you impact change in the circle that you're placed in? How do you impact other people's lives? And I believe that, like, as we've talked about it more and more, each of the 4 areas previously build you to the point where you can impact others.
That's it right there. That's what makes me excited, because I know, and I've seen it in my own life, that if you can get the other 4 right, mm-hmm. if you can put it in the right perspective and start living that way intentionally, the only natural result of that kind of life is to impact somebody else. And who didn't grow up wanting to be a person of impact? Like you, I wanted to be Spider-Man. But why did I want to be Spider-Man? Because he was cool? Yeah, he was cool. He couldn't go, he can climb up on walls, he can shoot web and all that kind of stuff. But he was like saving people. He was beating the bad guy. Like, I wanted to be that person to change the world through my actions. And this is how we become superheroes. Like, doing these 4 things well, people's lives would be changed.
I think, any great athlete, you watch their lifestyle and the work that they do when they're not on the court or on the field, it builds the performance. Mm-hmm. The habits that you create, somebody said of Kobe Bryant that he fell in love with what you do when the lights aren't on. When the lights are off, you're putting in the work, developing your heart. You're choosing to accept, God's definition of your why instead of maybe the subconscious why that you feel. When you're giving him your soul, you're understanding that I want to have an identity in Christ. I want to be close to him. When you're giving him, your mind, you're setting your mind on things above and you're choosing what you consume and what you input. You're giving him your strength. You're not allowing, your flesh, your carnality to just be a reflex that pushes you towards whatever feels comfortable. So you're doing all of this work through the help of the Holy Spirit. You're basically waking up in each category, understanding something's wrong here. Okay, die. I'm going to give it to God. I'm going to put it at the foot of the cross and say, Jesus, I need your help with this. And the Spirit will start to edify you more and more. You'll grow in those areas if you're seeking God in those areas. And then what happens is it's showtime. You get to work. You go to school. You're pursuing your calling. You're interacting with somebody at the gas station.
Right.
Every interaction that you have as soon as you step out of your door, as soon as you come in contact with another human being, even a family member, you are now on stage for God's glory.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, like, just because I hold a microphone up here, I believe anybody could use, their ability to further the kingdom. And I believe that God could use anybody to do what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm grateful that he chooses me. If he can use me and I don't have it figured out, I know that he can use you. So I believe God can use anybody, but I believe also that our stages can be different.
Right.
I know my stage is a literal stage at times, but my stage is also, how do I treat the people at the venue? My stage is how do I treat my family? My stage is how do I treat any human that I interact with? The person at the hotel counter, the person at the restaurant. My stage growing up was, the basketball teams I was on, the people I played pickup ball with. Like, your stage is not defined, as like this one-dimensional thing that you're going to get to some point in your life. Mm-hmm. When God's ready, he's going to let me do this. You're on stage. The Bible literally says you're entertaining angels. You're performing throughout your whole life for God's glory. Not that you're like faking something or it's not a performance, but I mean your life reflects him.
Yeah.
They will see your good works, glorify your Father in heaven. They'll see how you live. That's an encouragement to introverts. My little sister, who's my best friend, she is an introvert, whereas I'm a little bit more extroverted. I'm kind of in the middle. But she still impacts people for Jesus because that extra smile, the light in her life, her integrity, right?
Right.
That kind of stuff can be just as much of a sign of who God is in your life. So I just think what's cool about, waking up in this area before we die in this area is like, okay, let me pay attention to all the places God is putting me.
Right.
Let me pay attention. Am I actually impacting change? Here, this is kind of a challenging thing.
Okay.
If you're not impacting change somewhere in your life, you're not living the Great Commission, which is when Jesus said, go tell the world.
Yeah. That was Matthew 28.
Yeah.
Before Jesus went to
He said, your job,
heaven.
take this gospel to the world.
Right.
If you're not impacting change and you're not representing Jesus, you're not doing your job as a believer.
And
the personality type doesn't define that.
That's true. Yeah,
It's
because everybody can do this.
Exactly. It's how you live.
Right.
A lot of times that leads to the conversation of God anyways.
Yeah. Think about it. This is where it became so important to me.
Yeah.
Is I was reading a book, I can't even remember the author right now, but he talked about, think about everybody's life being represented by a circle. Okay, so you're a circle, I'm a circle. And right now, because we're talking together, our circles are intertwined, right?
Like a Venn diagram?
Like a Venn diagram, exactly.
Okay.
So there's that one space that we're intersected in. Okay, that moment, this moment right now, will never be repeated again in history. Never.
Whoa.
Okay, because think about this.
I've never thought about it like that.
Think about this, Zauntee. If we came back a year later and you wore the exact same clothes and I wore the exact same clothes and the studio was set up exactly the
Identical
same exact
location,
way,
all that.
everything is the same, except everything is different. Because you're not the same, I'm not the same.
The interaction won't be the same.
The interaction isn't the same. So the moment that I'm in right now will never, ever happen again. So anytime I'm with somebody, I can't repeat this moment. And I have to take advantage of this moment to impact the people around me because I will never get it again. When I understood that reality, I said, crap. This is a weight on me.
Yeah,
this is a
heavy.
responsibility that I have to become the greatest man of God that I can through doing those four
others.
things.
It's for somebody else.
Because somebody else's moment just came and went.
Do you have
and what did I do?
Do you have an example of some time that like you've seen that in your life?
Man.
Because I feel like just the weight of what you just said that's heavy.
Yeah.
I'll never get this again. It's my responsibility for the sake of the other person to let God use me in whatever way He's trying to.
Right. Okay, so I'm a pastor. I went to school to be a pastor, but I didn't start going to school to be a pastor. I went to school to be a computer scientist, and I got my 4-year degree, but really went through some spiritual turmoil in that process. And at the end of my junior year is when I got saved. Right, I gave my heart to the Lord, and entering my senior year, I told God, I said, God, I want to serve you. I don't know how. I don't know what you want me to do, but I need you to lead me, and I want it to be exciting.
Yeah.
Whatever I do, I don't want to be the standard Christian who comes to church every weekend, sings a few songs, listens to a sermon, and then goes back home and lives with no power. I want more than that. So during that year, somebody from back home, I grew up in New York. I was going to school in Michigan. Someone from New York, interesting enough, the church was named Babylon, the Babylon church, because the town it was in is called Babylon in New York. Babylon is like a really bad name in the Bible, right? It means confusion. It's like the kingdom of Satan, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so the Babylon church called me and said, hey, we're doing a youth day at our church. All the young people are going to be there. We would like you to come and preach. I was like, well, that's a weird question to ask me. But it was selfishly, I said yes, because I was going to get a flight home and I could see my family for the weekend and go preach and do this thing, right? So I went and I preached at that church, and I didn't know anything about how to do a sermon. I did the best I can. My dad had preached for many years, and so I guess the talent was in me, but so I do that. I go back to school, and at the end of the senior year, God tells me, you're going to be a pastor. I'm like, okay. I apply to go to seminary, and I get in. And I start my seminary process. Seminary is the school for pastors. Okay, that's where pastors go to get their degree. During my first year, the Babylon church calls me again and says, hey, we're doing that youth thing again. we want you to come back and preach again. I'm like, okay. Now I had a few classes. I was a little more seasoned, right? So I go back. And I preach that sermon, and I go to when I'm done, I go to the exit of the church, the normal, thank you, pastor. And I'm saying goodbye to the people, and I see this lady out on the corner, out of my peripheral vision, and she's just standing there, and I can already tell she wants to talk to me. Now, usually what that means is a person is upset about something you said in your sermon, and they want to come and challenge you or something like that. And I was just like, oh shoot, So I'm going through, hello. And finally the last person comes through, and she walks up. And I'm like, oh no, here we go. And she tells me, you don't know me, but when you came last year and you preached, I had come to church that day telling God, this is the last chance I'm giving you.
Whoa.
I'm giving you this one last chance to prove to me that you're real. What was happening was that she was coming to church, but her family was against her. And they kept criticizing her. And they kept telling her, if you go to church, you're going to have to choose between God and us because we don't believe in what you're doing. And I came to church that day telling God, this is it. And what you said in that sermon, and I don't even remember the sermon, honestly. What you said in that sermon empowered me to go back to my family and say, I am going all in for God. And if you make me choose between God and you, I'm going to choose God. And her boldness brought the rest of the family to church. And the whole family,
that's awesome.
Bro, the whole family was standing in the background.
That's awesome.
Watching us talk. And then she turned to her family.
So powerful.
She turned to her family. She says, come. She introduced me to her husband, to her kids. All of them saved now. And it was a result of me just telling God, okay, you give me this opportunity, gave me the platform, like you said. And I'm just going to go into my platform, not knowing what you're going to do. And a year later, I see the fruits of that faithfulness. That's the kind of impact we can have if we do these 4 things.
Yeah. I think that the beauty of that is like being faithful to know, I don't know. I believe that there's no accidents. I believe that you're placed in a position for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, even the weight of how much that impacts her family, how that's going to impact generations.
Right.
It makes me think of a couple stories. The first one being that I wouldn't exist without this guy named Spencer.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is my dad was working this job and he didn't follow God. He'd seen a lot of religion growing up, but he didn't have a personal relationship with Jesus. And this guy Spencer started to talk to him day in and day out, witnessing to him about the gospel, living it out, trying to show him this is who Jesus is. And what's crazy about that story is my dad ends up getting saved because of Spencer. He goes to a Christian college where he meets my mom. Mm-hmm. Then later, they're married. They have me. Then our family expands, 12 years later through adoption. Now I'm the oldest of 7 siblings, right? So now all of my siblings are pursuing our callings, things that we're passionate about. Me and my brother are both in ministry, traveling, the world doing this music thing and telling people about Jesus. I have thousands and thousands of followers and millions of, streams and views and all this stuff compiled, right? I've done 3 arena tours, 30,000 people a night, 20,000 people a night for, 28 dates, 30 dates. I've been all over, done all these shows. Why am I stacking all this? Because every single moment, every life that I've impacted, every person who's heard Jesus for the first time, everybody who's come up to me at the end of the show and showed me scars and said, this song saved my life. I'm still here because of what this song said. Every person who has DM'd me or texted me and said, I'm following Jesus now because of you. The 7-year-old at the end of the show that I did 2 weeks ago who said, I love Jesus, Zauntee, because you showed me that it was cool to love Jesus. Every single one of those individuals, nobody would have heard this message from me. None of those people would have been reached if Spencer had been tired one day.
Dang.
If Spencer had been worried about, man, what if this guy Chris, that's my dad, what if this guy Chris doesn't think I'm cool? What if I'm irritating him? What if I'm being annoying by talking about Jesus?
Yeah.
What if I'm being, too invasive by bringing up the gospel? Then my dad doesn't meet my mom. My brothers and sisters never find that forever family. I don't exist. And anybody who's ever been impacted by Zauntee and our ministry and what I do doesn't hear that message that they might have needed.
Yeah.
How many thousands of people? It's like those movies. It's like It's a Wonderful Life. It's like,
right.
I wish I'd never been born. And then you see how much your impact makes. If you're not here, how many people who needed you suffer? But what's beautiful about this is, like, my stage has been a stage, but Spencer's stage was his job.
Right. What was in front of him in the moment.
What if in that moment, like, just like with you, what if you get tired? What if you're worried about, man, I'm hungry. I want to take lunch early.
Right.
I really don't feel like talking. I'm more of an introvert. Or, this witness thing, being an example of what it means to follow Jesus, that's hard. I'd rather just do what everybody else is doing because it's more comfortable.
Right.
You can't give up. You can't give up.
Yes.
People need you. I need you. The world needs what you have to offer. And if you give up, you change who you are, you take that day off, and the people who need you won't find you. Every situation we're in is for a reason.
I feel like if someone listening to us right now is still unsure about what we're saying and maybe doesn't even believe that weight and that ability to affect change is real, think about your own life. Go back. If you go back, you're going to see that there were people along the way that made a small decision that became a huge thing in your life. Mm-hmm. It's always that way. It's always, I remember a friend of mine, we were playing tennis one time. We were playing tennis and he, I was beating him, by the way, just saying. since I'm on the camera, I get to say.
Anytime I tell like any kind of sports story or even if it's like 2K or something, hey, look, I was winning. Just for the record.
Right. I don't know if you've ever played tennis, but when you're in a tennis match, you have to at the end you come to the net and you shake hands. That's the way every tennis match ends. So we were playing, and the match wasn't over, and he started walking towards the net. And I was like, what's going on? I says, okay. Obviously, he wants to talk to me about something. So I went to the net, too. Now, this was a guy who his wife and his kids came to church, but he kind of sometimes came.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't all in kind of thing. And then he started telling me at this moment at the net, like, this religion thing isn't working for me. Like, this God thing, I'm not sure it's real. I know you guys I'm going to small group, I'm studying the Bible, you've been talking to me, you're my friend, I like you and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not sure it's real. And I'm doing all the things you're telling me to do, and I'm not seeing the power, I'm not feeling it. Mm-hmm. So I told him, okay, don't do any of that anymore. I said, don't study the Bible, don't pray, don't do any, if it's not working, don't do it, but do this instead. And I believe this was what God told me to tell him. Mm-hmm. Just start paying attention to the world around you and see if God shows up in some way. Just do that.
That's cool.
Just do that. Fast forward. He gets into some legal trouble and he's about to go to jail. He meets me for coffee. The next day he has to drive 3 hours to the prison and check himself in, where he's going to spend significant time in prison. But he has joy. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, remember that day at the tennis court when you told me to start looking around? He says, I started doing that. And I started noticing things. But here's where it changed for him. When I started noticing God around me, then I started going back into my life.
And realizing the places he showed up.
And I started seeing it. Mm-hmm. And he saw it, how over and over God had worked through people and through circumstances. And it was proof, finally, that he opened his eyes and he saw God has always been trying to impact my life.
Sweet.
And now I can go into prison confident that God is with me.
Yeah. It's when you look back at the path of your life and there's two sets of footprints.
Yeah.
And then when it gets difficult, there's only one set of footprints.
Yeah, that's that standard footprints poem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've read it like a bunch of times. It's like you're saying to God, why would you leave me when it got the most difficult? And he says, it was then, my child, that I carried you. If you pay attention, he was always there.
And he usually works through people.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And we get to be those people that God uses.
He's a relational God.
That's it.
We talked about that. The
Right.
very beginning was like, who he is he's a relational God. He wants us to be in relationship with him. We're made in his image, so we need that as well.
Yeah.
And I think that for a while, if you've been hurt by people, it's really easy to say, I'm going to live life alone.
Oh, man.
I've been hurt by people. I've been, I've fully trusted someone, and then, they betray my trust, or I've thought I could rely on someone, or, it's that kind of thing, or you've been left out, or you've been counted out, or maybe you never had somewhere to belong, or, maybe you have trauma. Maybe you have some story of pain in your life where it's made it hard for your worldview to be whole. All of that stuff can play a part into how you interact with people. One of the things that I encourage anyone with is like, say you have a really broken view of relationship. Mm-hmm. Say you had somebody you should have been able to trust, like a parent or a guardian, and you couldn't trust them. Or you had a friendship that, wasn't healthy, or a relationship that was abusive, no matter how dark. The pain that comes from that will try its best to warp your view of the world, because it's a very valid thing you experienced.
Yes.
But the challenge that God offers us is that did happen. And even though it was something you went through, you were never alone. I was with you. And I'm going to heal you from that. But also be aware of in the ways, my poppy, he's my mom's dad, my grandfather on my mom's side, he wrote a book called They Meant to Kill Me, because he was a missionary for 20 years in the Democratic Republic of Congo. There was multiple times where he was close to death, and there was this one time where he's in a mob and he's driving, in this vehicle, and they're throwing rocks and stuff, and one of them hits his head, and he had a prayer partner who was in the U.S. who had been praying for his safety, and he calls the prayer partner mad, like I thought we were praying for my protection. They almost, I got injured, and I was, they were threatening me, and this was terrifying. And she said this one phrase, and it stuck with him his whole life: they meant to kill you. How many moments in your life, the trauma and the pain that you've gone through, it would have been so much worse. But God allowed you. This is painful. This is hard to digest. But there are times where you've been allowed to walk through pain, because with God you would survive, but someone else without you won't.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that again.
Yeah, go for it.
You walked through pain at times because God was aware that with his help you would survive. But without your story, without your help, there are people who won't make it without you.
And here's where the mind comes into this, right? Because relationships are very hard.
Yeah.
Okay, let me tell you, I've been married for 25 years. I love my wife to death. I'm either riding the ship with her, or I'm going down into the abyss with her. It doesn't matter. But there are challenging times, and to go into a relationship, especially one that you're trying to impact, that you can impact, it takes courage. It takes fighting fear. And that's all up here. And there are going to be times where you got to walk into this thing bold, with strength and power from the Spirit. And you got to put that mind into submission and say, everything my body, my flesh is telling me to not do this. Remember, your flesh is not for you.
Yeah.
I've got to, through the power of the Spirit, go courageously, because fear is not a weapon of God.
Yeah.
Courage is a weapon of God. Power is a weapon of God. And I have to go in. Not giving
you a spirit of fear, but of a sound mind.
That's it. And I have to know that I'm risking the pain of rejection. I'm risking the pain of ridicule.
You know
what
hard.
I'm saying? All of that is real.
None of that is easy.
No, and it could happen. But that doesn't stop you from the calling that you have to impact the lives that you're supposed to impact.
Your only responsibility is to represent. It's
it.
not up to you what happens after. There's stories that you'll never see the result of. But you've got to be the example. Spencer is no longer alive. And he passed on when I was little. He never saw the culmination of my ministry. He never saw me and Dad working together like this. But he planted a seed. He did his job. Yeah. And I think that the thing that's interesting is you look at how life plays out. And so often we want to see the result right away. And if it's not an area we think we'll see a result, we don't try it. But like you said, it's just your job to have the courage. When Samuel was so upset, the prophet in the Bible, he was like, God, why do the people not listen to me? Why do they hate me so much? And God spoke to him. He was like, no, they hate me.
Right.
They don't hate you.
It's not you.
You're doing my will. At the end of the day, they're just upset with the things that I'm saying.
Yeah.
They hate me, and Jesus said, blessed are they who get persecuted, which basically means blessed are those of you who have bad things that happen, or people hate you, or they don't like you, or they say lies about you, all this stuff, if you do it for my sake, for Jesus' sake. And I think going out of the way when you don't feel like it is scary, but the second story that I was going to talk about is one I haven't thought about in a long time. And just a second ago, it came to my mind, and it's something that is actually, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people will understand that they'll have some point in their life that goes this way. Everybody's platform is different.
Yeah.
So I was on tour, right? My platform is being on tour and doing the music thing. This was when I was on Winter Jam, and you walk into these big arenas, and you're set at night, but through the rest of the day you're working. You're setting up your merch, you're tearing it down, you're loading in, you're loading out.
I've seen you do it. It's a lot of work, bro.
It is.
You guys got a lot of T-shirts.
Well, and at that time on Winter Jam, I didn't have a crew with me yet. I was still kind of in my, still a rookie, so I would either have one person with me or nobody with me on some of these runs. And so I'm moving carts and I'm pushing cases and stuff like this. And I believe God works all things to good. So there's this moment that I remember where I forgot something on the concourse. If you know how an arena works, these sports arenas, there's the floor or the hockey rink or whatever it is on the bottom, and then it's this bowl that goes up, and there's this pathway where all the concession stands are and all that stuff that goes around the arena. So that's where the merch goes, and I forgot something up there, and I think it was a beanie or something. I don't even remember what it was, right? But I just know that I went up there to go get it. And then I started to run back because I was trying to get to the bus, and I heard the Holy Spirit say, and I had been really focused on those other three areas, the heart, the soul, and the mind. And then I had been focused on the strength, the fourth area, because I was on this tour. So I felt like it was my responsibility to just be really disciplined, be really close to God. And in that moment, because of the closeness I had with him, I heard the Holy Spirit say, go back up on the concourse and walk the concourse.
Okay.
And the first person you see, pray with them. That's a very distinct thing.
Yeah.
Not everybody hears God with clarity. I believe anybody can. I believe it takes closeness. He'll be clear when it's time to be clear. I just knew that I was supposed to do that. I can't explain it any other way other than I just knew I was supposed to. For time-wise, I was in a rush. I didn't really have the time window to do it. And honestly, I was really tired. And I was in a T-shirt, and it was very cold. And, it's like this winter, and it's a hockey rink. And it's like, it's just like, all right, I'm going to do it. I start walking around, and I see this lady cleaning the chairs. She's sweeping up popcorn and stuff. And I still remember exactly what she looks like. I never even, asked her name. I don't think she ever knew mine either.
Yeah.
I just go down and I was like, hey, can I pray for you? And she was kind of like, what, like right now? Yeah, can I pray for you? This is something I've continued to do since whenever I feel like I'm supposed to. And there's been some crazy stories that God has done.
I've seen them.
This was the first one. Can I pray for you real quick? And I don't even remember what I said. I don't even remember what I prayed. I just know it was one of those moments where God was leading, and I just prayed from my heart. And she breaks down crying in the middle of this prayer. She's like on my shoulder. Like she's not leaning on me, but the tears are hitting me, and it's like a heaving cry. It's not like wow, this is touching. It's like heaving. And I'll never forget what she said, and I'll never forget her face, because she looked at me and she said, I really needed this. Thank you. I had the plans to commit suicide tonight.
Wow.
And I just think about it, like I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to have stuff figured out. But if there's a moment where God is saying, hey, step outside of yourself for a minute. Don't think about, the food that's on the bus. Don't think about that you're cold and that you're tired. Don't think about the fact that you just want to go home. And just like get out of your way for a second and love somebody. Pray for somebody. Just be kind. Maybe smile. Maybe shake somebody's hand. Maybe, thank them for what they're doing. maybe I can show them how much I love them. Maybe I can send a complete stranger to them, or maybe it's a family member they've known their whole life. Maybe it's a classmate. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe I can, through you, show them how much they matter to me. And the world will know the God we follow. Yeah. They will know that you follow me because of the way you live, because of the way you love. I didn't have to have a script for that. And I couldn't replicate that moment if I tried. And there's no way I could have known what she was walking through. And for her to have that moment and then to accept Jesus and then to say with passion and excitement, like, I'm going to keep going. And I believe that, if God can send somebody that I've never met to pray with me like this, that I matter, so I'm going to keep going. If that can be her one reason, how many more people can I impact like that? That moment could happen anywhere. Yeah. That wasn't me on the microphone. That wasn't me performing. That moment could happen in any situation with any individual, just loving them. Yeah. Even preaching the gospel at all times when necessary, using words. Sometimes it's your integrity. Sometimes it's your kindness. Sometimes it's the way that you show love, just getting out of your own way. And if you've given God your heart, and if you've given him your soul, and if you've given him your mind, and if you've given him your strength, and if all of those areas are submitted to him, if you've woken up and seen what was wrong, if you've died and put him at the foot of the cross, then when it's time to reach the world, when it's time to live like Jesus, when it's time to love others as you love yourself, to build them up, to encourage them, and to shine your light in this world, God will be there with you in that moment because you've done the work. You've been close to him, and he will say, my child, this is the way. Walk in it. Don't overthink it. Just move out of the way, and he will show you what you need to do.
It's so heavy to think that I could be the one person that God could use to save a life. And to think that God would have that much grace towards me, a broken person, to say, yeah, Milton, I got enough power to use you, and I believe that goes for everybody. Yeah. If we embrace what we're inviting people to, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Exactly.
And how strong. And what I love about what you said, because you started your story talking about that you had like this intense spiritual moment, right, where you actually felt God speaking to you, heard a voice, right? And some people are saying like, that's never going to happen for me, right?
Yeah.
And I can't guarantee, because I've been doing this God thing for many decades, and I can count on one hand the times I've actually heard a voice speaking to me, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen a lot. But here's the beauty of this. It doesn't take that. It doesn't take that miraculous moment to impact a life. I get this from parents all the time, especially when I was working in youth ministry. They like, Pastor, tell me what I need to do to help my kid know Jesus. Right? Like,
I know where you're going.
Give me the formula. Tell me what verses do I read them? What songs do I play for them? How many times should I take them to church? What classes should I give them? What food should they eat? Like they want me to give them the recipe for good, wholesome Christian children. And this is my advice to them, and this is my advice to anybody listening to us. You want to make an impact for somebody, in someone's life for God, live it. The life God has given you to the greatest degree that you can. Yeah. And live it out loud.
Yeah.
You said, preach the gospel, use words if necessary. That's what it is. And in fact, that's going to be more powerful than you standing up on a soapbox in the middle of the red light district yelling out, repent, for the day of the Lord has come.
Yeah.
You will impact more people by being the genuine, powerful Christian that God has called you to be than by any sermon that I will ever preach, any song that you will ever sing. It's going to reach so many people. It's that seed that the guy who spoke to your father planted that you talk about, that dies and then grows and then spreads and then boom. It's out of control, changed lives by us, by you, by me, and by you living this life out genuinely.
That's how you wake up. That's how you die, giving it to God. Everything that we've just talked about, I believe, falls into that category. It's your lifestyle.
Right.
What are you choosing to do every single moment you have, living on purpose? It's not going to be easy. You're not going to be perfect. The only thing you got to worry about is just seek God first, and all these things will be added unto you.
Right.
When you read that verse, what does that mean? When he says, seek first the kingdom and all these things will be added unto you, when Jesus tells us that, he's saying that if you love God in all these areas, if you just tenaciously, with intensity, you seek him and you put him first, the other stuff starts to fall into place.
Right.
And you start to, it's not forced, it's a natural lifestyle. I say this at every show because it's something that really encourages me. You have stories only you can tell and gifts only you can give. Your survival is proof to someone else that they can make it. And sometimes it's beautiful that the less qualified you are and the more broken you are, the less you have figured out, the more people see how much of it was God. If I can be here in this moment, if I can do what I'm called to do, if I can impact lives, and I'm so far from having it figured out, and I'm so human, and I struggle every day, and I feel like I'm not good enough, and I have insecurities, and I overthink things, and I have temptation, and yet in those moments I can still somehow get close to God, and then he can use me. How much more so you? Every single person has an equal opportunity to be used by God. Every single person has access to this formula that we've been discussing, to wake up in every area of your life, what's got to change, and to die, let that seed fall to the ground and explode with a plant that grows and reaches everybody, being a tree that provides shelter, that provides fruit. Jesus said a tree that bears good fruit is how you will know a believer.
Right.
If you're a tree and you're not bearing any fruit, then how am I supposed to know what kind of tree you are? But if you have apples or if you have oranges, I'm going to be able to tell what kind of tree that it is based on the fruit. You can tell a tree by its fruit, much more so you can tell a believer by our lives. Yes. And it's not, I used to look at it like this is so challenging, it's so overwhelming, it's discouraging. I don't know if I could do this ministry thing. I don't even know if I could live the Jesus thing day in and day out because it's so opposite of all my natural desires, and it's so hard, and it's never stopping. Every day I got to fight this battle. Move out of the way and trust God because it's worth it. There will be lives that you will impact, and the plan that God has for your life will fall into place. Yeah. The happily ever after that he's designed specifically for you because you're his kid, it'll happen.
Right.
In the time that it's supposed to happen. But until then, keep moving forward. Keep your head up. One step at a time. Do the next right thing so that the world will know the God we follow, and Jesus will be glorified here on this earth because of our lives.
Hey, if this spoke to you, we want to invite you to wakeupdie.com to keep the conversation going.